A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Now, the GST Council decided to impose a 28% GST on full face value for online gaming companies in the 50th GST Council meeting held on 11 July. While another GST Council meeting is scheduled to decide the modalities of implementation, we are going to have a discussion today about the impact and concerns related to the new GST policy. Joining me today on the panel are Navroz Udwadia, co-founder Alpha Wave Global, Badri Narayanan, executive partner Lakshmikumaran and Sridharan, and Dhanendra Kumar, first Chairperson, Competition Commission of India. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. So I want to begin this interview by asking you, Mr. Navroz, the concern of effective taxation being 50% to 70% is something that has been flagged by the investors. Also, 30 investors had written to the government with concerns regarding the same. What do you think will be the impact of this high taxation on the industry?
Great, thank you. Look, I think at the outset, first, we're all believers as investors in the Prime Minister's vision of $8 trillion digital economy, of gaming being a sunrise industry. And we've actually had a series of fairly enlightened regulations, including the industry being regulated by Ministry of IT, online gaming being, or fantasy and online gaming being considered a game of skill versus a game of luck. So this came as a bit of a shock because not only did the 18% move to 28%, but I think more important, the base was changed from revenues to contest entry amount. And the problem with that is not that the 18 moved to 28, but the base moved. And when the base moved, the effective taxation, you're right, is more close to 50 to 70% because a person who enters a contest gets taxed 28%, and if he wins, he typically redeploys that capital and plays 2 or 3 times, and every time he has to pay the 28%. And so the compounding effect of that is 55 or 70%. We think as an investor community, the impact of that is fairly dire across 5 axes. Number one, we think unambiguously 20 to 25 billion of enterprise value that currently exists today, established market cap, will be wiped out. Number two, our estimate is that somewhere between 850 and 1,000 gaming companies supplying data and other tools to gaming companies, and other SMEs that are related to Indian online gaming will be wiped out. This is one of the fastest growing tech sectors in the Indian ecosystem. So we've got a total of 100,000 jobs likely gone. We, as a big investor into the Prime Minister's vision and the Indian tech ecosystem, we would have to recalibrate our pace of investment. And our estimate is there's somewhere between $8 and $10 billion of inward capital investment that would have come over the next 5 years, also gone. Most interestingly, if you think about taxation and the concept of the Laffer curve, which is this point, economically proven point, that taxation beyond a certain point or threshold actually reduces the collection of tax by a government. Our estimate is that over a 5-year term, over the course of the next term of whoever wins this next election, this taxation policy will reduce tax collections by $5 billion. It will cut tax collections over a 5-year term in half. So for us, the impact of this move to not to 28%, because I think we all agree that what's best for India is what's best for the gaming industry, and maybe it is time to go from 18 to 28%. But going from revenue to contest entry amount and then constantly taxing the same rupee as the same player plays again and again will wipe out the industry, kill jobs, reduce capital investment, kill tax collections, ironically, and many other harmful effects.
Now, Mr. Narayanan, coming to you, In your view, what amendments can the industry expect ahead of the GST Council meeting on 2nd of August? What are the implications of such amendments, and what is the process to carry out such amendments?
Thanks, Ritwika, and I think it was very nice to hear Navroz's thoughts, and I echo many of his analysis and consideration. Today, for example, there are two sets of transactions happening. One is relating to actionable claims, which comes out of the prize pool, which today is not taxable because actionable claims have been kept outside the purview of tax, except that relate to lottery, gambling, and betting. So one of the things that we'll have to do before we can even move forward would be to make amendments in the CGST, SGST, and the IGST laws across India to kind of first bring this amendment to actionable claims to actually bring it within the ambit of tax. So actionable claims related to online games will have to be brought into the purview of tax. There have to be corresponding changes, which are deeming amendments in the CGST and SGST Act in terms of suppliers, in terms of valuation, and so on and so forth. So we first expect one set of amendments to be done in the Act, which is just not the Central Act, but all the state acts, and of course the IGST Act. And then, of course, it doesn't stop there. The valuation methodology probably will need to be tweaked. It's not obvious that the value would be CEA or any other base. So there'll have to be detailed methodologies which have to be brought in for the purpose of being able to amend. So the rules under the CGST, SGST rules will get amended. And then, of course, there will be notifications with respect to rate and so on and so forth. So they have to bring a whole set of changes in the Act before they can make the changes in the rules. And therefore, across the whole of India, all these amendments will have to be taken into effect. So at different points of time, the different state legislatures and the central legislature will make these amendments, bring them about, and then cover it. So 3 to 6 months, but this in brief, an amendment should have to be brought in order to give effect to this. So relatively small policy change is probably going to have a significant number of amendments in the law itself.
Sure. Mr. Kumar, I want to bring you in the discussion now. Post the GST Council announcing a 28% tax on full face value for the online gaming industry, the industry has claimed it to be a body blow and raised concerns that the industry may actually die as a result. What is your perspective on this?
Thank you, Ritwika. Let me say the following. First of all, let us view it from the point of view of different stakeholders. The members of the GST Council, for example, many of them would feel that this is one of the sin industries and it's being bracketed accordingly, along with the casinos and horse racing and then this online gaming also. Now, there can possibly be no objection if the rate of GST is being increased from 18% to 28%, because that is something on entertainment industry also applicable. But we have to view this industry, online gaming, from various viewpoints. One of the big employment generators, and also a number of young Indians, boys and girls, are engaged in developing games. Number of games are being exported, and it is going to lead significantly to contributing to a $5 trillion economy with all its employment and exports and so on. Let us also view it from other viewpoints. There are a number of illegal sites which are operating in India and could possibly operate more also if it goes out of market. And for whatever reason, if there are no legal sites operating in India, then there could be a number of illegal sites which could come up. And illegal sites would mean not only loss of revenue to the government, but also it would be posing a security threat also. So we must do everything possible to curb the emergence of illegal sites in the country. Now, coming to the 28% GST implication, as I said, there is not so much of a problem of the 28%, but on the multiple taxation, the cascading effect of it, because if 28% is applicable on full face value when it is entered, at that time, let's say 28% of 100 rupees goes, if 100 rupees is betted on this. But later on, whatever remains out of that and the platform fee, then whatever remains with the gamer Suppose he wins something out of 100 rupees, let's say he wins 60 rupees, and he plays with that 60 rupees plus whatever is left with him out of that 72 and the platform fee, whatever it is, let's say 66 rupees. So with that, it's again subjected to 28%. Now, the repeat of 28% on every betting is against the philosophy and principle of GST, which is against multiple taxation. That was the concept under which GST was brought in. Now, this is exactly what is going to happen if we are having a cascading effect, that there would be multiple taxation. Every time you bet, you have to pay 28% until it becomes zero or whatever. And then whatever is won, then on that you have to pay 30%, the income tax, TDS, and so on. So altogether, there are multiple taxation angles involved. So what I feel is that the industry's concern in this regard is justified. And while 28% could possibly be acceptable and the industry could possibly live with it, but this thing, repeat cascading effect of GST applicability on this must be reviewed in the next meeting of the GST Council, scheduled to be held on the 2nd of August.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. Today we are discussing the various aspects of the GST policy's impact on the gaming industry. Listen in. Sure, circling back to you, Mr. Navroz. Tell me, what is the expectation from the investor community, from the upcoming GST Council meeting? How would that affect the future outlook for investments in India's online gaming sector and on the overall startup ecosystem in India?
The movement from 18% to 28% GST on gaming is what's right for India. We're fully supportive of it because ultimately what's right for India in the medium to long term will make for good investing. But it's the change on the base on which that rate is applied that is startling, right? It was 18% on revenues. If it moved to 28% on revenues, that would be a 55% increase in tax. If it moves to, that would be a heavy blow, but the industry could manage that. If it moves to deposits, meaning a one-time taxation on every rupee that's deployed, it's a 350% increase in tax for the government. It's a hard blow for the industry, but the industry would more or less survive, and then it would sort of stagger along for a couple of years, but then recover. If you triple tax each dollar or rupee that a player puts in by applying 28% on contest entry amount, CEA, that's a 1,000% increase in taxation. And for the individual, it implies a 55 to 70% increase in tax because the average individual redeploys his winning 3 times. Interestingly, for casinos, the GST Council made it very clear that it would only be a one-time tax on the chips that a person deployed or took out to play with. So on casinos, the GST Council has, with great enlightenment, distinguished between single taxation on a particular rupee versus multiple points of taxation on the same rupee for gaming. So our hope is that either we remain at 28 because I think 28% because I think that is in the interests of India, but that it is either on gross revenues or on deposits. And when I say deposits, I mean very clearly that a single particular rupee of deposits is only taxed at 28% once. Not if that person wins and then plays again, he should not be taxed again and again and again.
Sure, Mr. Kumar, coming to you, What do you think is a possible solution then for this situation, given that the Revenue Secretary has clearly stated that taxing GGR will not be considered, and what will only be considered for discussion by the Council, whether the full value of bet means at the entry point or for every game?
Thank you very much. We have to ensure that the industry survives. We have to ensure that the industry doesn't get killed. We have to ensure that the industry doesn't move offshore from India. We have to ensure that the offshore illegal sites do not operate in India. We have to ensure that the thousands of jobs do not go away. We have to ensure that the revenue which flows to the central government and to state government, it remains intact. Now, with all these factors in mind, we have to see that if we are bracketing online gaming with the other two, the casinos and horse racing, all being clubbed together as a sin industry, it's okay, fine, no problem. Each one involves betting and wagering and so on. So that point is well taken. But we cannot make it worse than the casinos. In casinos, it's not multiple taxation. It's only on the initial deposits. Here also, some people feel that it's a sin industry. Some people feel that this would result in youngsters getting hooked to it and so on. So the government has already mentioned that they would not allow industry when it results in one of those three things which the minister just mentioned, including conversion, and also people getting hooked to it, and also the habit of betting. But it can be done in a manner, and although the government has not differentiated between the skill-based industry and the chance-based industry in terms of the online industry, at least notionally a difference can be made. And on the skill-based industry, which is also sometimes used in the esports, I think we must take a rational view. What is good for India, what is good for India's employment and exports, and allow everything possible to let it prosper and flourish and not exactly get killed.
Well said. And finally, Mr. Narayanan, as we wrap up this interview, tell me, given the two options being considered by the GST Council for full value of each round, that is a single point tax on deposits or on every game, is there a legal flexibility to implement such options under the GST law? And what would some of the legal questions that may be considered before arriving at a decision on the same?
Thanks, Ritwika. I think that's an excellent question that you put to me. We, as you see, as the Revenue Secretary and the GST Council kind of meet again, the discussion is probably going to be on how to look at this full value of bet, and the full value of bet, whether it should be at the entry point, which is what we call popularly as deposit, or whether it should be on the contest entry amount, or every entry or every transaction based. See, one of the things is very clearly that, the government recognizes that a cascading effect of taxes is not good either for the government or for the industry, and generally for the market as a whole. It encourages people to do things illegally, and I don't think the government has any intention to kind of push people to do things which are on the gray rather than black and white as we know it. By taking this transaction fee or a platform fee on a per transaction basis, the gaming companies are merely trying to put it off as installments at a further point of time. But ultimately, all the money comes from that single deposit that players make upfront with respect to these games. By taxing the deposit or the upfront entry fee, it takes away the complexity of having to track down transactions, track down every fee, bonus points, cashbacks, various marketing expenses, and so on and so forth. And ultimately goes back to what lies at the base of all of the transactions, which is ultimately the initial money which is put in. Just by looking at the churn, I don't think the government should look at taking that as a base for the purpose of being able to do that. Couple of concerns that I had is, one is that I think we need to be careful to ensure that once we tax on the full value of bet in the form of deposit, there should not be any further leakage of taxes. That is, the statutes and the provisions should be clear. Of course, we'll know only when the fine print comes out. Should be clear that it doesn't go back and then again tax GGR or any other form of contest. So that's one big concern that I have, and I hope the GST Council, and I'm sure the Law Committee and others will take care of that.
Well, those were some very, important observations. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. It was good having this discussion with you.
Thank you very much indeed. It was a pleasure attending it. And I feel it's a very important subject for discussion today. And whatever happens on the 2nd of August would possibly determine the course of this industry in times to come.
Ritwika, thank you very much. I think this is a very timely panel. It's a critical moment for the industry and also for the wider tech ecosystem, because this will have a huge signal. One more piece of enlightened regulation could be a huge catalyst. And all of these companies, whether they're cards, fantasy, casual real money gaming, they all have big and large bets. They're all in the same club. They're all in the same boat, no matter what. So we look forward to a favorable ruling that will be good for India as well as good for the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ritwika, and it was a pleasure to be part of this panel. And like I said, I hope the GST Council recognizes both the economic and the legal implications from this. And I hope that there's a meeting of minds which allows an optimum taxation of this industry, at the same time allowing this industry to grow and become a world power in the years to come. So like we all said, all eyes on the GST Council on 2nd of August. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you and goodbye.